It's that time of year where a bunch of clueless YouTubers try and tell the whole wide world what their 1 to 20 for the Premier League is, and I'm joining the crowd. Just a couple of things before I start the video. I am a Sheffield United fan. I do not really care about any of the Premier League teams, which is good for you because there's going to be no biases. It's going to be the most accurate, unbiased prediction that you're ever going to see. And there's a few channels on YouTube like The Club who like to just bait you into content to try and get clicks. I'm not like that. I just speak my opinion using facts and figures alongside my eyes. So if you like what you hear, hit subscribe on the channel, click like on the video, and let's get into the 1 to 20. So in 20th, I've got Leicester, and I don't think it comes as much of a shock because they've got rid of Maresca, he's gone to Chelsea, and Steve Cooper's come in. It looks like he's going to go from the 3-2-5 possession shape, which Maresca played in the Championship last season, dominating the division, to more of a 4-2-3-1. It looks like it's going to be Winks and Ndidi and CDM. It looks like it's going to be Fass and Vestergaard or Akoli at centre-back. Up front, I don't really know where the goals are going to come from. I know that Jamie Vardy is doubted every year and normally provides. This year, I genuinely don't think that he's going to quite be a 15 to 20 goal season striker in the Premier League. And they've also got Patson Daka, but again, I'm not too convinced by him. And when you look at their squad from the last time they were in the Premier League, they've lost Dewsbury Hall, they've lost Maddison, they've lost Barnes. To replace them, it's players who just clearly aren't quite as good. And in 19th, I've got another newly promoted team. It's Russell Martin's Southampton. And Saints, I'm really sorry because I've seen what you've done in the transfer market. You've bought in Lallana, you've bought in a couple of youngsters like Wood and Edwards from the EFL, and I think you're doing some good stuff in the transfer market. Brereton Diaz as well. He was at Sheffield United last season, and I reckon for 7 million is a really good pickup. But I reckon Russell Martin is going to be stubbornly playing his 4-3-3 expansive passing football, and I've got a feeling it's going to end in tears. You look at when Scott Parker got promoted with Bournemouth, and they sacked him fairly quickly, but he also got promoted with Fulham, didn't he? And it didn't quite translate. Burnley last season trying to play the ultra possession football, it looks pretty and it doesn't quite convert results when you've not got the quality. I'm happy to be proven wrong by Southampton. I'm happy for Russell Martin to prove he is a capable manager for the Premier League, but as it stands, I'm going 19th. And in 18th, I've got Nottingham Forest, and I've got a few reasons for this. Nuno Espirito Santos is their manager, and yes, he did well at Wolves a few seasons ago. Yes, he kept Forest up last season. Do I think that he's a good manager anymore? I don't think he is. I'll be honest with you. I think, Forest finished on 32 points last season, and they had point deductions, I know, but they definitely didn't reach that 40 mark, which is, the typical staying up standard. In the last 12 games of the season, they got 9 points, and this is the key for me, okay? Form going off at the end of last season shows that they're terrible, they're relegation form. And then I've got Brentford in 17th. Last season they finished 16th, just above Forest, and I've got a similar trend again. I don't think Brentford have improved the squad enough. They have kept Tony as it stands, but it sounds like he could be going to Manchester United. They signed Igor Thiago up front from, I think it was Bruges, and we don't know how good he is. I know it was a decent, 35 million fee for him. I think they still need to reinforce the defence and midfield. But like in the Premier League, a squad cycle only lasts so long, and I don't see them sort of reinforcing that enough. In Thomas Frank, I think they've got a capable manager. I think the players are good for the Premier League, and they're all, performing to their max ability. Obviously, if Mbeumo and Sharda stay fit this season, they've got a very, very good front line, especially if Tony stays, and they've obviously got Visser as well. And then in 16th, I've got Wolves, and I'd just like to put it out there, any of these bottom 5 which I've got right now, I feel like it could potentially finish in any order, okay? As it stands, it looks like Pedro Neto is leaving Wolves. He's going to Chelsea for around 60 to 70 million at the time of recording. Gary O'Neill, tactically, he does decent. Apparently, he's trying to go to more of a 4 at the back this season, which makes sense because they lost Max Kilman to West Ham. So at centre-back, who have they got? They've got Totti and Craig Dawson, I think. If I'm not mistaken, I just had a look at their squad, so I genuinely couldn't think about who's there at centre-back. They've got Santiago Bueno as well. And they've also signed a couple of players from Portugal. Pedro Lima's a fullback, and I don't know much about the signs, if I'm being honest. What I do know is they've got Hwang up front, they've got Cunha up front, they've got Tommy Doyle in midfield, they've got Lamina in midfield. I feel like they've got a very capable team who know the division well. And then in 15th, I've got Ipswich. I really rate Kieran McKenna, okay? I did a video on him a couple of weeks ago. You can go check that out now. They've retained most of their squad, which includes, Luango and Morsey in midfield, George Hurst up front. They've signed Hutchinson from Chelsea, who was on loan last season. They've bolstered the squad as well. They've signed Greaves, they've signed Townsend, they've signed Delap, and they've signed Johnson. So I'm getting really good vibes from Ipswich. I'm not going to say much more. You can go check out the video, which I did 15th. And then in 14th, I've got Brighton. We've got Hertzler, a 31-year-old as manager. At St. Pauli, he did play a really good brand of football last season, so I'm excited to see how that translates to the Premier League. But they've lost Lallana, and Gross has left as well. I feel like Gross has been there for, what, 7 or 8 years now? He's been there for a hell of a long time. He's been sort of Mr. Brighton, you could say. But they have signed Vifer in midfield, who was under Arne Slot last season. And even if Hertzler doesn't get off to the best of start, Brighton is more than a manager. They clearly have very good people behind the scenes. Bloom, as their owner, is a gambling man. He takes risks and normally they pay off. And then in 13th, I've got Everton. The main reason for this is Sean Dyche. I rate him so highly as a manager. Look at what he did with Burnley, and he's got a slightly stronger team with Everton. They have just lost Amadou Onana. He's gone to Aston Villa for around 50 million. They signed Iliman Ndiaye, and as I said at the start of the video, I'm a Sheffield United fan. I know how good Ndiaye is. If he plays in that striker role, or the second striker role, maybe where Decore played, with Calvert-Lewin or Beto, I feel like he's a real game changer. They've also signed O'Brien at centre-back from Lyon, and he's a highly rated player. He didn't have the best of seasons last season, but neither did Lyon. And they've also signed Lindstrom, a decent midfield, attacking midfielder, as an attacking 8, I suppose. And I'm looking forward to see how he does in the Premier League. I don't think with Dyche as manager, they're in any danger of going down. And another team with a mid-table finish, I've gone for Bournemouth. Iraola is a manager who came into the Premier League last season, and a lot of people thought he might have done well because he did really well with, I think it was Vercono. He's done really well with Bournemouth. At the time of recording, it looks like Solanke is going to Tottenham, which is a big blow. I feel like Solanke should have been on the bus to the Euros. Or the plane. And to replace him, they've got Unal, who was on loan at them for the second half of last season. Do I think he's as good as Solanke? Nowhere near. But I trust Iraola to do well. You know, you look at their team, they've got Kirkash at left back, I really rate Lewis Cook in midfield with Christie. I feel like they're in safe hands with Iraola. And then I've got Fulham in 11th, and it's another one where I rate the manager very highly. Marco Silva knows what he's doing. He did really well at Hull, he did well at Everton, and now he's doing wonders with Fulham. Notable loss is Paulinho, and a really tough tackling midfielder. He was very good at breaking up the play with them. This season it looks like they're going into it with Lukic and CDM now. I feel like they could do with signing another player in that position. They have signed Smith Rowe. Apparently he's playing on a left wing role where he cuts in, which allows Anthony Robinson, probably in the top 5 left backs in the Premier League, to be honest, to bomb forward. And they've signed a centre back called Cuenca, I think it's said, or Cuenca, to replace Adebayo, who's gone to Chelsea. And now going into the top half, I've got West Ham United in 10th. They've got Lopetegui as manager. It's going to be a bit of a transition phase. It's another manager who plays a relatively direct style of football. They've just signed Nicholas Füllkrug, who's a striker who he's definitely downgrading from Dortmund. It's weird how he's left Dortmund. So he's such a good striker. He's one of them who gets better with age. And I'm really looking forward to see how he does in the Premier League. They've also signed Somerville from Leeds, and last season he was amazing in the Championship. They've also signed Max Kilman from Wolves, and he's going to be their left centre-back for a good half a decade, you'd have thought. West Ham creeping in the top half. 10th, they might go higher. And then in 9th, I've got Chelsea. It's a bit of a shock. I don't really think Maresca's that good of a manager, although he got Leicester to win the Championship last season. That was the minimum that they should have done with that squad in the way that how they played. He doesn't set his teams up to be too clinical. It's very much your defined role is here. It's the 3-2-5, which is very popular in football right now. They've got around 40 to 45 senior players in that squad. It's an absolute mess. I know that half of them will probably go out on loan. They're about to sign Pedro Neto, who I feel is like a really good player, but I just don't trust Chelsea in nurturing players and making them better. I can't think of the last player that Chelsea really improved. In 8th, I've got Aston Villa, and it might come as a shock because they got Champions League football last season. But Newcastle did something similar once they got in the top 4. Champions League and Premier League football, balancing all that out is very difficult for clubs. What Aston Villa have done, which Newcastle didn't necessarily do, is they've added depth. They've signed Ross Barkley, Maatsen, Nanana, Diaby's left, and so is Douglas Luiz. Potentially their 2 key midfield attacker players last season. So it's going to be very interesting to see them line up without those players. The likes of Morgan Rogers are really going to have to come to fruition this season. Prove me wrong, Aston Villa. I've got you in 8th. And then in 7th, I've got Crystal Palace. Akin Glasner is such a good manager. In the last 12 games of last season, He had them 4th in the form table. They've only lost to Leicetser from last season, but they have added Ismail Assar. They've added Kamada, who I'm looking forward to see as an attacking midfielder. They've also got, Wharton, who's had half a season out of them. Imagine that he's going to do now with a full pre-season. And I don't think it was a new manager bounce what Glasner had done with them. I feel like he worked really well with the resources that he had. He got players like Mateta firing, and I'm really, really excited to see what he can do this season. So I've got them in 7th. I reckon that they're going to get the Europa Conference League. And then I've got Newcastle in 6th. And without Champions League football, they can focus on the Premier League a little bit more. They got 7th last season, so they have still got the Conference League, but it's nowhere near as intense as the Champions League. As it stands, they've not really signed any players. They've signed Vlachodimos or something. I don't think he was even that good for Forest, so signing him for over 20 million is a weird one. Paul Mitchell came into the club at the start of July as the sporting director. And is a big name in the football world, so we could see potentially Newcastle sign a couple more players and looking stronger. But as it stands, they've got Tonali coming back. Joe Linton was injured for a lot of our season, so he's going to be back. Eddie Howe, I really rated the manager playing that 4-3-3 fluid style of football. In 5th, it's the same team as who finished there last season. It's Tottenham Hotspur. The only reason for this is because I feel like the top 4 are just superior to them. It's as simple as that. They've added Solanke in, as I say, and I think he's such an underrated player. He can score, he can hold up the ball, he can make play, an all-round striker. I think Postecoglou is clearly a very capable manager. We saw how well he did at the start of last season where Spurs were firing. People were saying, oh, can they win the Premier League? They didn't really get close in the end because they burnt out and they got some injuries because they don't have much squad depth. I feel like that needs to be addressed. They need to sign a couple more players. As soon as Maddison got injured last season, they were pretty done for. But hopefully, if they can have a bit of a fitter campaign this season, they've also got the Europa League as well, so pushing the Champions League might be a bit too much for them. I've got them in 5th. And then in 4th, I've got Manchester United. They've signed Xerxes, they've signed Lenny Yoro. I feel like it's looking really good for them, and I'm excited to see where they go with Ten Hag because this is his 3rd year at the club now, and I feel like it's time for him to finally stamp his mark. They've been used to playing this fast counter-attacking style of football, soaking up pressure, and that's sort of the Manchester United way, but it's not the modern way of playing football. If it can go to more of what he did at Ajax, where it's a 4-2-3-1, all-round footballers in every position, Xerxes is going to complement that really well up front. Yoro is out for the first couple of months, to my knowledge, and if Lisandro Martinez is back, I feel like they've got a very capable squad, and as long as it's not as injury hit as it's been for the last couple of years with Ten Hag, they're going to do well. And then in 3rd, I've got Liverpool. Major difference from last season, obviously, is Slot coming in for Klopp. And the fact is that they finished, 16 points clear of 4th last season. That was Aston Villa. They got 82 points, and they were 7 points behind Arsenal in 2nd. But I don't think that Slot's going to come in and he's going to decline the squad enough to be 16 points worse off. I think that they're going to be the 3rd best team in the division again because obviously City and Arsenal are above them. It's going to be another very capable 6. Slot's playing a 4-2-3-1 and it's a lot more possession based than what Klopp played. Klopp was very much get the ball, attack as fast as you can, all round chaotic football. But with Slot, it's a bit more patience on the ball. It's trying to work out your opponent's weaknesses. I feel like we're going to see, a player like Harvey Elliott or Sloboslai playing really well in the 10. And I'm excited to see how they do, 3rd. And now it's time for where we find out who wins the title or not. Is it Arsenal? Is it Man City? It's going to be City, isn't it? Let's just talk about Arsenal first. Obviously, they've added in more depth to their squad. They've signed Calafiori. They're rumoured of getting Marino. Every year, Arteta is improving this squad, making it more balanced, making it compete with City even more. Obviously, they had a couple of injuries last season with the likes of Timber, and Jesus always seems to be out. Martinelli didn't have the best season. If those 3 players can be more consistent and play this season, they've got so much balance everywhere. They can play so many different styles of football depending on the opponent. But Man City, what can you say? They've signed Savinho just to add in that bit more depth into the squad. And Pep Guardioli is still the manager. I don't think I really need to say much more. You can argue for it in the comments if you want, but I think City have got the title. So yeah, that's my 1 to 20 for the Premier League for the 2024-25 season. Please let me know down in the comments your 1 to 20s. I'm going to pop into the description line 1 all the way down to 20. All you have to do is fill in the teams. I want to know why you guys put them there. Critique mine if you want. I know that there's going to be a few criticisms, especially with the likes of Aston Villa, Manchester United. So let me know all of that down in the comments. I'm going to reply to you all. Until next time, thank you very much for watching.